I'm a novelist, and one thing I can tell you about writing is that first-time authors, especially the hordes of numbnuts, douchey amateurs who thought they would idle away the pandemic dashing off a quick bestseller, tend to write a poor first-up novel. Invariably, this is because their story will be motivated by wish fulfillment, committing to paper their idealized depiction of a relationship or erotic summer they never had, a fantasy of power they were thwarted from actually attaining. The writing experience, for them, is quite exciting, but because of this blind spot of placing realism and the reader second, the reading experience will be boring as shit. The language will be expressionless, the plot nominal, the stakes absent, and the whole thing will be shot through with a feeling of indulgence. Take this idea of indulgent wish fulfillment and its creative pitfalls, apply it to modern screenwriting, and then catalyze it by adding identity politics in a creative and cultural environment where, instead of there being shrewd and dispassionate commissioning editors smelling this kind of thing a mile away, there is actually an atmosphere of permissiveness, with studios sometimes giving the screenwriters a permission structure to express and impose their indulgent impulses on new and existing properties. Eventually, such habits and practices will start to pall. Actress Emily Blunt offered this perspective in a recent interview. It's the worst thing ever when you open a script and read the words, "strong female lead." That makes me roll my eyes. I'm already out. Reading that, many might wonder how on earth Hollywood could have ended up at such a place, especially given those in and outside of the Hollywood system have been advocating to see more strong female leads for decades. The issue is, the modern strong female character is in many ways negative and reductive. This is what Emily Blunt was getting at. Strong in this sense means being powerful and centered in the narrative. However, in the modern age, such characters are often presented to us from the first frame as physically and morally strong, savvy and witty enough to win every exchange, and have agency right from the get-go. All of which negates the most compelling things that attract us to great characters and good storytelling. An arc, character growth, someone being humbled and learning from their mistakes, then ultimately prevailing. It also limits the range of expression for actresses looking to extend themselves by depicting troubled and flawed characters. Strong, in this sense, also seems to mean uncompromised by societal norms, biases, or any other limitations, which is a self- or gender-aggrandizing fantasy that discounts the idea that most people, even heroes, are, in one way or the other, compromised, or beset by troubles, and held back by their limitations, and they derive their strength, and our sympathy and engagement, by coming to terms with, integrating and surmounting their flaws, their pain, their regrets, and their limitations. We like characters who, in the classic hero's journey formula, begin the story quite young, or naive, or untested, who then face challenges which they overcome by discovering resilience within themselves, and who, starting out stubborn, or yet to mature, fall out with their companions before learning to be humble and to compromise, then banding together again to overcome an obstacle or defeat an antagonist. But for these screenwriters, their heroines compromising means their heroines being compromised. These qualities I mention are ones we like in our heroines too, and we don't always recognize the legacy of some of the most notable on-screen heroines from yesteryear. Actress Jennifer Lawrence, during an interview for Variety's Actors on Actors series, implied she was the first ever female action lead.
Nobody had ever put a woman in the lead of an action movie because it wouldn't work. We were told girls and boys can both identify with a male lead, but boys cannot identify with a female lead.
Oh, absolutely.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Now, consider many modern strong female characters. There is the limitless power and bravery of Captain Marvel. Rey Skywalker begins the most recent Star Wars saga already independent and resourceful. She bests the first man she meets in a push and shove. She knows how to make repairs on the Millennium Falcon, a ship she has never ventured on before. She resists the force powers of the leader of the First Order. She wins every fight and duel, and by the end of the trilogy, she has become a kind of space Jesus who can heal wounds. In Amazon's series The Lord of the Rings of Power, Galadriel, from the start, is an indomitable warrior who leads wavering men, kills a massive troll, is morally and physically perfect, wins every fight, and unerringly gets her way. The modern, strong female character, therefore, is too often overpowered, which might be fulfilling for the screenwriters, but is contrived and underwhelming for the viewer, because if there is the absence of genuine threats, there is the absence of storytelling tension. If there are insufficient challenges, there is an absence of stakes. This is another drawback to the strength of the modern strong female character. It often involves fight scenes with incredibly obliging stuntmen and rapid-fire edits that don't look credible. This isn't to say females can't necessarily overpower men, but not when the men are bulky, muscular giants and the actress is a petite 55 kgs. When women began to catch up to men in terms of representation in the writing room, there seemed to be a prevailing assumption that they would imbue Hollywood action films and fantasy dramas with nuanced and complex portrayals of femininity. To a great degree, that has indeed come to pass. There are plenty of action and fantasy genre shows where the heroine is vulnerable, unsure of herself, and grows as a character. A show like House of the Dragon uncompromisingly portrays the unacknowledged sacrifices of women, their having to work within constricted roles, physical dangers of childbirth, and the exertion of influence without the need to be a sword-wielding badass. But no one seemed to reckon with the idea that some women writers would turn out to be just as indulgent as some of the men, who would do self-inserts, be lamely, disproportionately, and clumsily agenda-driven in ways that would get people's backs up, and who would develop unappealingly overpowered heroines. Any attempts to call this out, or even contextualize it, are fraught, because doing so will likely incur accusations of chauvinism, of being a reactionary, or being threatened. This isn't balanced because it fails to acknowledge the distinction between nuanced and flawed characters on the one hand, and tedious girl boss Yas Queen superheroines on the other. Eventually, enough indulgent shenanigans would ensue from less equality and identity politics-driven directors, producers, and screenwriters that an actress of the caliber of Emily Blunt would acknowledge it's the worst thing ever when you open a script and read the words, strong female lead.